We begin tonight with our top story, a Hannity watch featuring what is a sad and scary radicalization of the Democratic Party. Everybody should be concerned. Now, remember, just a few decades ago, there were racist, anti-Semites, bigots. Well, you think back, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and some of the past history of the Democratic Party, we've outlined that history. In fact, congressional Democrats overwhelmingly voted against the '64 Civil Rights Act. 112 Democrats voting against it, including Al Gore's father. The 1965 Voting Rights Act was largely opposed by Democrats, a whopping 70 Democratic lawmakers opposing those important protections for minorities in America. And one of the longest-serving Democratic rock stars in the U.S. Senate was a former Klansman, somebody that Hillary Clinton has mentioned as her mentor, Robert Byrd. Now, unfortunately, tonight, the more things change, sadly, we're beginning to see the more they stay the same. We have freshman Congresswoman Omar, who has now exposed her party's all-too-cozy relationship with virulent anti-Semitism, constantly pushing anti-Israeli conspiracy theories. She called the world's only Jewish state evil, speculated that its citizens were hypnotizing the world. She continuously uses anti-Semitic, characterizations about Jewish people and money and Jewish dual loyalty to Israel. But as of tonight, Congresswoman Omar has faced zero consequences for her blatant and constant display of anti-Semitism and remains on the important Foreign Affairs Committee. Now, we have 12 pro-Israel, pro-Jewish organizations have called on Speaker Pelosi to remove Omar from that committee. But that's not going to happen. Pelosi is now throwing those groups right under the bus and making the lamest of excuses for her anti-Semitic colleague. Let's take a look.
When you cross that threshold into Congress, your words weigh much more than when you're shouting at somebody outside. And I feel confident that her words were not based on any anti-Semitic attitude, but that she didn't have a full appreciation of how they landed on other people, where these words have a history and a cultural impact that may have been unknown to her.
I'm sure Speaker Pelosi will give the same considerations to Republicans when they say similar things, God forbid, or she'll make excuses for anybody. Now, Pelosi, sadly, is not the only Democrat giving cover to Congresswoman Omar. The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee is also refusing to take the necessary action against the anti-Semite on his committee. Take a look.
At what point do you say to her, Congresswoman Omar, look, you're not on this committee anymore. You strip her of your seat. Are you close to that, or at that point?
No, I'm not close to it. First of all, it's not up to me. This is done by the leadership. I don't know that would do anything except exacerbate the situation even more. I'm looking to get rid of anti-Semitism, not looking to punish anybody.
Biggest problem here is this keeps happening with Congressman Omar again and again. And believe it or not, it gets worse. Democratic Majority Whip James Clyburn actually saying to The Hill that Omar's life experience is way, quote, more personal than the children of Holocaust survivors, so everyone should give her a break. All right, well, I'm not sure if most Americans agree with that analogy. We did lose 6 million Jewish souls were slaughtered in the Holocaust, and that's not all. Many 2020 presidential candidates, they are also supporting Omar, including Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren. So, too are many other prominent Democrats on Capitol Hill. We've got the tape. Take a look.
I think it's just part of a learning process that we have as a country, frankly.
There are different perspectives. My perspective is that her comments were inappropriate, but that she has apologized and that we should move on.
I'm looking to get rid of anti-Semitism, not looking to punish anybody.
Ilhan Omar is a refugee from Somalia. She comes from a different culture. She has things to learn.
She apologizes again and again and again. Now, this is really now the party of literally accepting what is pretty virulent anti-Semitism, bigotry, and perhaps most alarming and most telling, part of this entire scandal is that a House resolution that was to condemn anti-Semitism it didn't have enough Democratic support to even bring it to a vote because they knew it wouldn't pass. Well, that was until Speaker Pelosi allowed Congresswoman Omar access to literally help in the editing of the new resolution. You can't make this up, and it doesn't mention her name. And this bill condemned pretty much every horrible group of people: white supremacists, neo-Nazis, KKK, white supremacists who murdered 9 African Americans in 2015, condemning bigotry against Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and also condemned anti-Semitism. Didn't mention her name, not once. Now, the very reason why this condemnation was to be written in the first place. It also made no mention of Congresswoman Tlaib, who wrote a column for Louis Farrakhan's racist and anti-Semitic newspaper. It also made no mentions of the various Democrats who associate with Linda Sarsour, another virulent anti-Semite. She has publicly supported Sharia law and female genital mutilation, like 2020 contenders Kirsten Gillibrand, Bernie Sanders. Kirsten Gillibrand was on stage with Sarsour. Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu, and then, of course, Representatives Ocasio-Cortez and Tlaib, and so many more. Where is the moral, simple strength to just stand up to this bigotry? Where's Nancy Pelosi? Now, there's a reason why she's acting this way, and the truth and the reality is she really knows deep down in her heart she is no longer Speaker. She lives in complete fear and panic and is totally and completely controlled by this fringe, radical, socialist, anti-Semitic elements in her party. She knows that if she doesn't accommodate their extreme whims, in this case of Congresswoman Omar or Tlaib or Ocasio-Cortez, she will be overthrown from that all-important position. So tonight, Nancy Pelosi is merely the Speaker of the House in name only. The radicals are pulling the strings, and it's a pretty scary picture. And today we learned that Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been hit with a brand new complaint, now this time over her boyfriend's email account. Now, the ethics complaint alleges that Ocasio-Cortez actually obtained an official mail.house.gov email address for her boyfriend by falsely designating him a staff member. This is now the third recent complaint filed against Ocasio-Cortez. She also received 2 FEC complaints, including one accusing her of illegally funneling thousands and thousands of dollars in campaign funds to her boyfriend. Another alleging that her campaign manager improperly funneled nearly $1 million from the campaign to private business. That one in particular, but they're all extremely serious issues that could result in charges as it relates to campaign violations. That's if we have equal justice under the law. And according to reports, Ocasio-Cortez may soon face even more legal trouble, with an impending ethics complaint surrounding the improper, literally commingling of campaign and government social media accounts in order to raise money. Like every other good socialist, she appears to be pretty corrupt to the core, especially now with money involved. And tonight, she represents everything that is wrong with this new radical, extreme Democratic Socialist Party. A party that is excusing their own bigotry and anti-Semitism. A party that is pushing the most radical socialist economic policies that will guarantee America spirals into a depression. It's that serious. A party that has gone so far to the left, they won't even hold a debate on the Fox News channel. By the way, I won't be hosting, don't worry. Let not your hearts be troubled. A pretty gutless move by Democrats. And yesterday, President Trump, he responded on Twitter, writing, quote, Democrats just blocked at Fox News from holding a debate. Good. Then I think I'll do the same with the fake news networks and the radical left Democrats in the general election debates. Well, that makes sense, given that every single second of every 24-hour day, these other networks are totally, completely dedicated to one thing and one thing only: trashing, smearing, besmirching, and destroying President Trump and anyone that likes him. And I'm sure these networks would love to hold future Republican debates, despite, of course, constantly dehumanizing and lying about President Trump and never admitting it. In reality, we know that 2020 Democrats, they're just too afraid to face real questions from fair and balanced journalists here on the Fox News channel and our news division. Journalists who don't buy into the conspiracy theories and fake news that will ask fair and tough questions. You know what? They're not in the tank like CNN and MSNBC. On this network, we distinguish opinion and news. Obviously, I am a talk show host, and I've explained that job for all the people that want to listen. They don't seem to understand what it is we do. Journalists who won't feed questions to their favorite candidates ahead of time. Remember, CNN did that for Hillary Clinton. Remember in 2016, Hillary Clinton's campaign totally ignored huge blocks of voters that she considered deplorable. The rest is history. Maybe this radical crop of 2020 Democrats, maybe they'll learn from her mistakes. I tend to doubt it. Okay, tonight, before we get to our guests, we have an important update. Hannity watch on Mueller's witch hunt. Well, today, Paul Manafort was sentenced to 47 months in prison. Now, that's just shy of 4 years. Now, this is for tax fraud, bank fraud, other crimes, not at all, as the judge pointed out in very strong terms today, nothing related to Trump-Russia collusion. Nothing to even do with the time that Manafort worked for Trump, which was, I think, maybe 100 days. Now, Manafort could have been sentenced to 19 to 24 years if Mueller got his way. Obviously, they wanted him to die in prison for cheating on his taxes and lying on loan applications. By the way, free advice, pay your taxes. The federal judge called those guidelines excessive. The judge has also gone out of his way reminding people this case has nothing whatsoever to do with the Trump campaign and Russia collusion. This is a witch hunt. Remember the judge, Judge Ellis in this case, had said, oh, they want to put the screws to Manafort so he'll start to sing or compose. We know what this is all about. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. All true. And now 4 years in jail for Manafort. Now, that's not stopping, by the way, the mainstream hate Trump media mob from taking a joyous victory lap. By the way, when is Hillary going to be charged? Take a look.
It's sort of like when they wheeled Hannibal Lecter in, on that gurney in Silence of the Lambs. I have very little sympathy for Paul Manafort at this point.
You impeach if it's the only option for protecting the country from someone, his campaign chairman not working in the American interest.
His days of $10,000 suits are over. No matter how this plays out, he's going to prison for some period of time, most likely a long time.
Paul Manafort's case and even Michael Cohen's case. Pay your taxes, and if filling out a loan application, don't lie. Good advice. Obey the laws. For years, the mainstream media breathlessly reporting conspiracy theories about Trump stealing the election with Russia, and there was collusion. They told you Russia was blackmailing Trump. They reported about trips to Prague that never happened. Remember, they reported that Donald Trump had 2 hookers in his suite at the Ritz-Carlton, urinating on his bed. It never happened, as so many other lies were told by the media. But they're celebrating the sentencing of a 69-year-old man over charges that had absolutely zero to do with President Trump or his campaign. And they take apparently great joy in all of this. We'll have more on this later in the program.
Omar is one of 2 female Muslim lawmakers, and some Jewish lawmakers have called that offensive, to suggest that they have an allegiance to both the U.S. and Israel. Many of them wanted a strong condemnation of Omar, saying her comments have no place in the Congress. Others supported her, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But in an attempt to hold her party together, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi took all the teeth out of the resolution. Wyoming Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney was furious about it, saying in a statement, quote, today's resolution vote was a sham put forward by Democrats to avoid condemning one of their own and denouncing vile anti-Semitism. Rep. Omar's comments were wrong, and she has proven multiple times that she embodies a vile, hate-filled, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel bigotry. So why didn't Democrats have the stones to call Omar's comments for what they are, anti-Semitic? With me now, co-host of The Five on the Fox News Channel, it is Juan Williams. Juan, I know you love love. I know you hate hatred.
Sure.
I don't think it would have been the worst thing in the world for Democrats to focus in on anti-Semitism here and really condemn it forcefully.
Well, if we're talking politics, it was clearly an effort by, I think, the Christian evangelical right, but on a larger scale, the GOP, to divide the Democrats on just this point.
What about the Jewish Democrats who were offended by what she said and wanted her named in the resolution?
I think there were some, because I think that Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota, she used tropes that are offensive in terms of not only that, the business about divided loyalties, but Benjamins and the like. Clearly,
and hypnotizing Jews.
Clearly, these are historical themes that have been used to diminish and demean Jews globally, not just in this country. And she did not display any sensitivity. But on the other hand, and I think you hear this from people like Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, the senator from Vermont, he said, you know, what you're seeing here is an effort by the Republicans to undercut the Democrats and undercut any legitimate criticism of Israel, as opposed to anti-Semitism. Elizabeth Warren said the same thing. This is chilling in terms of free speech in this country. So you get Pelosi saying, I'm going to hold my forces together. What you just saw there, and I'm so glad you played that or displayed that statement from Lynn Cheney. Lynn Cheney said, this is shameful because the Democrats held together. The votes that were against that resolution, Kennedy, came from Republicans, those 23 votes.
Yes, that's absolutely right, because they have seen how Democrats are trying to use race and racism as a wedge tool in order to make the president look worse and make the Democratic field look better. It's all politics. It's not one side doing it more than the other, and it's also no surprise that the other side is going to exploit any weakness or fracture within the caucus. But let's take ourselves outside of politics for a second. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. It is very serious, and it is in our very recent past the Holocaust. And, I don't think Jim Clyburn does himself any favors by saying what Ilhan Omar has been through is much more personal than some of these Jewish members of Congress.
I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, and I take offense to that, because that's like saying slavery was 200 years ago. You don't know real racism. You don't know what real pain is. And there's something about that you can't categorize every person's personal connection to their family history.
Well, I'm not sure what you were saying at that last one, but on the Jim Clyburn part, I agreed with you, because I think that what Clyburn was suggesting, that because Ilhan Omar was born in Somalia, had gone through a lot of the anti-Muslim purge and all the rest before she came to this country, that a lot of this was very immediate for her, and that her reaction to the situation in the Middle East between the Israelis and the Palestinians is to somewhat stand up and say, hey, these people are, in fact, being pushed out. There's no longer talk of a two-state solution, which has been long-standing U.S. policy. Yeah. And you have a very right-wing Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, policy being put forth. So I think that he was trying to say, you have to understand where she's coming from, and she may not be familiar with all the kind of limits we put on conversation.
I don't know about that, because she's been pretty vocal in her home state of Minnesota, and she's had a lot of members of the Jewish faith kind of pull her aside and say, listen, this is offensive and this is why. So it's not her first time, but my question is now.
Right.
If she says something or does something again, I would be really shocked if these Democratic senators who are running for president rush to her defense and paint her statements with all sorts of nuance. Like she was really talking about foreign policy in terms of Israel. No, she wasn't. And we know that. And even Nancy Pelosi said, well, she's really not that smart.
No, I don't think she says not that smart. She says she's not familiar exactly with kind of the road, the map, in terms of how we discuss foreign policy and Israel in this country to avoid charges of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
But I think the key here is this. If you look at the vote,
don't use phrases like "it's all about the Benjamins, baby." When
well, of course, those are offensive.
Yeah,
we agree. But I'm just saying, if you look at this, I think the reason the Republicans want to divide the Democrats on this issue is because Jewish voters, I think 6% of Jewish voters say they'll vote for President Trump. But 50% of Jewish voters agree with his policies, like moving the capital to Jerusalem.
Yes.
Trying to undo the Iran deal.
So if I were a Jewish Democrat, I would be looking at this resolution, saying to myself, why am I still a registered Democrat?
Well, I think your point is exactly the point that Republicans want to drive home tonight.
Yes, and I think that does speak to the politicization.
That's the politicization of what's going on. But I don't think, and I don't think Pelosi said this, do I think Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite? No. Do I think that she's a babe in the woods in this discussion, trying to say we need to have honest discussion about our policy in Israel? Yes.
There may be some competency issues. She may be emotionally immature, but it can't happen again.
It shouldn't happen again. And if it happens again, then you know, I think the
you're gonna see
Republicans
some
will be
real
successful
consequences, yes.
in hammering the Democrats for not specifically saying this is about Ilhan
Yeah.
Omar and about
If it's about foreign
anti-Semitism.
policy, then go do your homework so you sound well informed,
Well-
and then you won't have claims that you don't.
Well,
know
this
what
is
you're
the first
talking
time
about.
we have Muslims, two Muslim women in the Congress, and a lot of this, by the way, seems to me be about the freshman class with all those young women, especially women of color.
Competing for oxygen.
Well, but I think pushing the discussion, especially in the Congress, into areas we've never had before, because we didn't have a Muslim voice in the Congress saying, "Hey, we have a different view on Israel
I like
and their
different views.
relationships."
I think that's great, but I also love rationality.
You know what? Also, I like people who aren't offensive.
Yeah, I like people who aren't offended. Juan Williams, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Karen.
Always great.